Good morning. Good morning, Facebook community. Good morning, Mount Gilead family. It's a privilege to be with you today as we do another online devotional. My name is Kent Phillips, and I am the Connections Minister here at Mount Gilead. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us. Today, as we dive into God's Word together, I wanted to share with you all something that recently spoke to me and that I heard, and that was a reflection on two separate events in the life of Moses that are very similar at first glance, but very different in outcome. And I want to look at those instances and see what we can pull from that, glean from that for ourselves, our own lives, the way we approach our faith and interaction with others. Good morning, Steve. Thank you so much for tuning in, brother. So today, I called the daily devotional A Tale of Two Rocks, because what we're going to do is we're going to look at the life of Moses. And one event is found in the book of Exodus, and the other in the book of Numbers. And both of these instances are very similar. In both of these scenes, we find Moses and the people of Israel, who he has led out of slavery and captivity in Egypt, and they're making their way to the Promised Land. But in both of these stories, good morning, Angie, in both of these stories, there comes a moment where as they're wandering through the desert in different regions, they come to a place where they are exhausted, they are dehydrated, and they're in need of water, and there is no water to be found. And so in both of these moments, the people of Israel turn on Moses and say, what have you done? You have led us out of the land of Egypt, where at least we had food and water, so that we will starve here in the wilderness, and our cattle and our children and our families will perish. So let's look at the first time that this type of event happens, and that is in Exodus 17. Several months ago, we did a good morning, Karen. Thank you so much for tuning in. Several months ago, as a church, we did a series called The Way Out, a look at the book of Exodus, and we went over some of these scenes from the book of Exodus. But today, we're going to look at Exodus chapter 17. And so what happened is the people of Israel, they're in the wilderness. They came to camp at an area called Rephidim. It says, but there was no water for the people to drink. And so the people turned on Moses, said, give us water to drink. And so Moses did the only thing he could do. Good morning, Jerry. Moses did the only thing he could do, and that was he went to God, and he cried out to God. And this is what he said, beginning in Exodus 17, chapter 4. He said, what shall I do with this people? They are almost ready to stone me. And the Lord said to Moses, pass on before the people, taking with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. And behold, I will stand before you there on the rock of Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water shall come out of it, and the people will drink. And it says, and so Moses did this. Imagine this scene. So he goes, he bows, humbles himself before God, and he says, what do you want me to do? The people are thirsty, there is nothing, they're turning on me. And God says, take your staff, the same staff that you used to separate the Nile, and I led you to safety. And he said, take it and go before them. And so he did. And he showed the people of Israel, he struck the rock with that staff on behalf of God, and it broke open, and water rushed out. And they had water, and they were nourished. So we fast forward. So that's happened. He went to God. God gave him clear directions. Moses obediently followed. And God met the needs of the people of Israel. So fast forward to longer into their journey. They're continuing to travel through the wilderness. Now, this account is recorded in the book of Numbers. And so similar thing, they are perished, they are thirsty, they are famished, and they are beginning to turn on Moses. So then, this is what happened. Moses went back to God, and God said to him this time, "Take the staff and assemble the congregation, you and Aaron your brother, and tell the rock before their eyes to yield its water. So you shall bring water out of the rock for them to give drink to the congregation and their cattle." And says, "And Moses took the staff from before the Lord as he commanded them." Now listen really quick. I want you to hear this. In this event here, God doesn't say the exact same thing. He doesn't say to strike the rock as he did previously in Exodus. He says, "Take your staff and go and speak to the rock." He's stretching Moses even farther here, because instead of making it seem like it's some physical action, like it's something that Moses did, right? Like it was the actual hitting of the staff on the rock that caused the water. He's saying, speak to the rock and tell it to give you water, and it will come forth. So listen to what happened here. This is really important. Here in Numbers, beginning in verse 10, it says, "Then Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock, and he said to them, 'Hear now, you rebels, shall we bring water for you out of this rock?' And Moses lifted up his hand and struck the rock with the staff twice, and water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank, and their livestock. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, 'Because you did not believe in me to uphold me as holy in the eyes of the people of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land that I have given them.'" Wow. Okay, so the people needed water. Moses went to God, and then he did this act that produced water. But God said, "Because you didn't listen to me and you didn't honor me, you will not lead them into the promised land." They had been on this 40-year journey, and in this moment, God says to Moses, "Because you didn't trust me, you didn't do what I told you." So Moses still produced the result. The people were still cared for despite Moses not listening. So what did Moses do that was so wrong in this moment? Well, some people can look at this and say, well, he was speaking harsh to the people. He said, "You rebels," and that's true. And that was part of it. And he also was taking glory on himself. He said, "We will," meaning him and Aaron, "we will give you water," instead of saying God will provide for you. But I think the big thing here that is so profound is that he didn't listen and trust God when God said, "Speak to the rock kindly, gently." Instead, he believed, Moses thought it was the hitting of the rock. And so to be sure, he hit it twice to make sure. And of course, water sprang out, but it wasn't a result of anything Moses did. It was the goodness and kindness of God. See, the big problem that Moses had here is he was trying to take matters into his own hand. Instead of trusting and relying on God to provide and God to hear the calls and to move, Moses, in this moment, grasped for control. He tried to bring forth water by force instead of faith and trust in God. And so instead of modeling that God provides if we will just trust and rely on him, he modeled to the people of Israel this idea of forcefully commanding and manipulating and controlling things by the way he hit the stone. And this is such a powerful juxtaposition of events, because I think we do this so often in our lives, is that instead of relying on the quiet movement and trusting in what God is doing gently in our lives, we try to force control. We try to force relationships to be the way we want. We try to force the behavior of those in our lives the way we want. We try to force our own growth and change instead of, in stillness, trusting in God and allowing God to speak calmly into our lives. See, God just told Moses in this second event here, just speak to the rock and tell it. And God said, and I will bring forth water. So the thought today, the takeaway in this is to reflect and to say, God, where am I trying to to make change, maybe in my life and in my world, by force, instead of relying peacefully on you and trusting in you and hearing what you're speaking to me. See, God was calling Moses to trust him, that he would do it, that just by his gentle words, he could bring forth the water that the nation of Israel needed. And Moses failed because he tried to do it by force. And so maybe there are some places in your life, some relationships, that God is just wanting you to trust him and to use your kindness in words and heart, and not try to control and manipulate and change yourselves or people by force. So today, as you're praying and reflecting, maybe you should go before God and say, God, where am I trying to control through force and actions, like Moses did here? Help me to see where I need to trust in you, and I need to rely on your goodness and what you will do gently and with kindness and with a spoken word, instead of trying to force and manipulate things on my own. I hope that was a blessing to you, like it was to me when I heard that reflection on those two passages. Have a wonderful day. May God bless you and keep you, and may his face shine upon you.